I haven't read your novel yet, but since you clicked on this video, you likely have a problem with your novel's ending. And I would like to help you end that ending related problem. So today we're going to go through some reasons why your novel's ending isn't ending well. Reason number one that your novel's ending doesn't work. It lacks a proper setup. There are no bad endings, just beginnings that don't fit onto the ending that you've stuck them onto. Writing a good ending is less about writing a good ending and more about paying off what you set up in the earlier parts of your story. This could be a twist that doesn't land, a revelation that was revealed to not be that interesting, a character displaying a sudden aptitude that doesn't jive with their previous displays of skill. There are all kinds of things that can happen in the ending that would have worked were they set up differently in the beginning. This can even creep into areas like tone and mood. If your novel has been somber and depressing for most of the story, but then it ends with some slapstick and wacky hijinks, that's probably going to rub readers the wrong way. You start writing your ending the minute you start writing your beginning, so keep that in mind. Next reason your ending might not be working, you aren't answering the reader's questions, or you aren't answering the right questions. The reason a reader reads until the end of whatever it is they're reading is to get answers to specific questions that they have about what they are reading. That question could be whether or not the hero is going to succeed at thwarting the villain. That question could be about who murdered the butler, could be about whether the comically mismatched love interests are actually going to ship or not. When an ending either leaves a question unanswered or answers questions that the reader doesn't care about, or doesn't provide answers that make sense, then you've got a problem. Sometimes leaving a thread dangling, sometimes not answering a question can work, but usually readers want answers to questions, and if they don't get them in your ending, they aren't going to be happy. Special note here about series or trilogies, stuff like that. In those stories, you do sometimes want certain questions unanswered because you need material for subsequent books, but that's kind of an exception to the rule and sort of out of scope of this video, so I'm not going to go into that today. Readers want closure when they close the book. You need to make sure that you're giving them closure by answering the questions that they have. Next reason your ending might not work, it's a sad ending, or it's a happy ending. One major decision about your story is whether it's going to be a tragedy or not. Whether it will have a joyous, happy ending where the characters get what they want, or an arguably more realistic ending where they descend into an endless pit of despair as every hope and dream is wrung out of them like a washerwoman drying a wool blanket. A story that seems like it's building to a happy ending only to have the rug yanked out from the reader at the last moment will not end well. Not end well in the sense that the people reading it may not like it. Also, the other way, too, I suppose, because it's a tragedy, so it doesn't end well. The sort of ironic thing about a lot of tragic stories is that the reader generally knows that they're a tragedy as they're reading them, but the characters involved don't necessarily know that it's a tragedy. You need to be very careful with how you set up reader expectations about what the ending is going to be, whether it's going to be a tragic ending or a happy ending. The reader should generally know, and you should generally adhere to those expectations as you're crafting your ending. Next reason your ending might not be working, you introduced plot resolving information too late in the story. Let me paint you a picture. Or I guess write you a scene, technically, because there's no paint. Your hero and their friends are stuck in a disastrous situation. Cornered and outgunned, the bad guys are gathered around, laughing maniacally as they ready to end the hero once and for all. Then, just as that one bad guy is finishing up his monologue that he started instead of just immediately offing most of the main cast, an heroic badass leaps from the shadows, thwarts the bad guys, and saves the heroes. Your main hero then turns to their friends and says, "That's my friend Jim. He's a badass who saves the day and lurks in the shadows." That scene would probably be okay in the first few chapters of a story. It's a way, and actually not a bad way to introduce a character. It's a great way to introduce a character. It's a good way to create some early tension in a story. And if you keep that scene early enough in the story, it still works because the purpose of the scene at that point in the story is just to introduce the badass character who comes in to save the day. However, if the climax of your story, if the ending of your story involves the heroes being saved by an as yet not introduced character that's never been hinted at and we had no idea existed up until this point, that's probably not great. There is a threshold in any story beyond which introducing new information, new characters, or new abilities will sully rather than enhance your ending. A Deus Ex Machina is only a Deus Ex Machina when it is introduced too close to the ending. You need to make sure that if there's a sudden revelation or something new that gets introduced that helps the characters in the ending, that it's not introduced too late, because that kind of feels like cheating and it will lead to an unsatisfying ending. Next reason your ending doesn't work, the characters didn't need to work for it. There's a reason that Nepo babies with trust funds who can get everything they want without any effort aren't usually the protagonists of most novels. Conflict and difficulty and having characters earn what they get usually makes for more enjoyable stories. In fact, cheating or getting something without putting in the requisite effort is often the reason that tragedies happen. If you make solving the final conflict of the story too easy for your characters, if they aren't pushed to their absolute limits, then the ending may feel unsatisfying. It might not feel like the characters have earned what they've gained through the course of the story. Nobody wants to do work. That's why we read about characters doing work, because that makes us feel vicariously productive. Don't discount the importance of the reader watching characters being pushed to their limits in your story. If your ending is resolved without characters doing that, that can be a problem. And the last reason that your ending possibly didn't work, you made the characters work too hard for it. This is kind of the opposite of the last point, but I think it's worth bringing up because going too far in the other direction can actually create problems too. When the difficulty of resolving your plot rises to the level of impossible, you start to run into problems. While an ending that comes too easily leaves readers feeling unsatisfied, an ending that seems so difficult as to be impossible will leave them in disbelief. There's a reason that the Death Star had that poorly placed air conditioning vent. Well, I mean, all the Rogue One reasons, but still, the story reason for the Death Star having poorly designed ventilation systems is to give a massive undefeatable enemy some kind of weakness that the heroes can exploit. If it didn't have that, then destroying the Death Star would seem like this impossible, really difficult to accomplish task, and any sort of machination that the story would have to go through to allow the heroes to do that just would come across as unbelievable. There is a sweet spot between the conflict being too easy to solve and so impossible to solve to be improbable. You want to be in between those. You want a very difficult conflict that seems possible to solve, that has a path for the heroes to solve it. Going too far in either direction can cause problems with your ending. Speaking of problematic endings, this ending is problematic because I really didn't write or put any effort into the ending of this video. So there you have it. I'd love to hear what you think about this in the comments down below. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.